do something that you're passionate about. Don't worry about the results. Talk about something that you care about and put it out into the world, and things will be good.
I'd like to welcome to the show Michael Gallagher, man. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being on the show, man. I truly appreciate it, man. When you guys reached out to me, I was like super excited to talk to you because I've known of your work in the past, and you're unlike any other guest I've had on the show because of your history with the internet and with YouTube and the new wave of entertainment that has kind of moved in. So before we jump into all of that, first and foremost, how did you, and I'm afraid to ask because you're a little bit younger vintage than I am, but how did you get into the business? Because they're like, oh, well, I was 5 years old. I shot 3 features. I'm like, shut up, just shut up.
That's so funny. Well, I'm from San Diego. I'm 30, so I was born in 1988. So,
yes.
But growing up, I was always in love with, storytelling, indie film. I read, Rebel Without a Crew when I was like, I don't know, probably 13 or something. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of just started getting like obsessed with that sort of like 90s indie film movement of like Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith, of like these guys that were just like going off and somehow making a movie. But then as I got older, I started noticing that like the path of those guys, as soon as they did it, that doesn't exist anymore. It's like Sundance, that whole thing, that changes. Yeah. As soon as someone like gets in the door, that door shuts, and now you got to find a window or a crawl space or something to get into the industry. So I kind of kept an open mind, and I was a little daunted of like, how do you make feature films? And so I just started, as a kid, just doing short films. I would, with my teachers, try and pitch doing a video project instead of having to, write a book report or something. Mm-hmm. So like even in school, like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, like even really young like that, I was editing on iMovie and just kind of, taking my dad's camcorder and just going out and shooting stuff. None of it was good. Let's just start there. None of it was actually good. I've actually gone back and looked at it.
It shouldn't
be. Yeah, but I started taking it more seriously. And then in high school, my parents, I was like begging my parents, like, I got to go to some kind of film school, film camp, whatever I can find. And there was this thing at the New York Film Academy in Burbank that they had a high school summer film program. So I went to that at 14 and shot 16 millimeter film and cast SAG actors. And I was just like hooked. Like I'm not a drug person, but that was my drug. I was like, all right, I'm 14. I can cast SAG actors. Game on. Let's do this. So then from like then on in high school, I'm in San Diego putting out, actors access notices and like casting SAG actors and running auditions at like DoubleTree conference rooms. And, I'm just being this like ambitious film kid. And then I would submit to local film festivals and, just try and get better and, do 48-hour film contests. Like I was all in and just trying to figure it out. And then, eventually that led to, when YouTube came along and the partner program, I saw that people were able to just make whatever they want, put it on YouTube and actually get paid for it and get seen and get an audience. And it seemed, I was kind of doing that with these shorts, like not spending a lot of money, just putting it out there. And I was honing my skills. I thought, okay, well, what if I could take the filmmaking side and apply it to this new media kind of concept? And that's how I started Totally Sketch. And I just started making weekly sketch comedy videos, on a whim like that. And it took off.
Now, which is the funny thing that you say is that you saw that wave in the 90s. I mean, you were very young, obviously, but you saw that whole concept of the 90s. By the time you started to really figure it out, that party was over. So you realized that wasn't the way to go. I, on the other hand, took 20 years to learn that lesson and thought that it was the 90s all over again and was trying to do the exact same thing that Robert did and Kevin and Quentin and all those guys. And it took me a long time to figure that out because, and this is my truth. I don't know if you know about this or not, but in 2005, I was on YouTube. I was posting tutorials on how to make films on YouTube in 2005 before anybody had even thought of doing anything like that. And then, of course,
Amazing.
I said, and you can look, they're still up on YouTube. There's like 13.
Sure.
Yeah, they're 13 years old or something like that. I looked them up the other day. I'm like, oh my, really bad compression because YouTube was horribly compressed back then. And then I just said to myself, I don't know if you've ever run across this. I'm a real filmmaker. I don't I don't put stuff on YouTube. I don't teach other filmmakers how to. That's not why I went to film school. I'm on a tour, and
there's definitely a classist sort of system of like Vimeo, YouTube, and at that time, Vimeo was like the classy place for all filmmakers, short films, and YouTube was sort of like a loud party that was just like
right.
bang.
But I just wish I would have just stayed on, because I would have literally owned the entire space of showing you how to make movies at that point. Can you imagine if I would have just made content all that time?
Incredible.
It would have been insane.
You're doing all right now. You don't have to worry.
But still, I'm still a very angry and bitter filmmaker. But but what I find fascinating is that you were very open-minded to this new medium, and I think so many filmmakers, even in today's world, they're not open-minded. They stick to their like, oh, I'm only going to do this or I'm only going to do that. And you said, well, wait a minute, that's not working anymore. This is the new thing. Kind of like when guys jumped on Vine, when Vine was a thing, there was a small window of opportunity there. There was a small window of opportunity when YouTube, like you could make an obscene amount of money on YouTube when the partner program started and things like that. That window closed. Now it's like you got to work a lot harder to make remotely that much money. Is that correct?
Yeah, these things, like exactly what you're saying. There's like a short window as something's kind of new and exciting and untested. And the people that get in that moment and just give it their all, sometimes they succeed. And then as soon as they've succeeded, big business comes in and says, wait a minute, like we can't just let anybody do this. Wait, who made $1 million? Who did what? And then all of a sudden they just start buying everything up and then close the doors, and then no one can get in because it's all corporations now. And then it's like, now you got to find a new wild, wild west to like go in and and go make your mark.
It's because in the 90s it was, indie films were the Wild Wild West, Sundance and those kind of things were the Wild Wild West, and then it turned into other things, and then eventually YouTube, and now it's streaming and being on streaming shows and things like that, which you have experience on as well. And I'm curious to see what the future lies right now, because there's so much competition. Even when you started, there wasn't as much competition.
Well, there really weren't that many filmmakers on YouTube. Like I think I'm like a crop of like, I don't know, 5 people maybe.
When did you start on YouTube? What year?
On YouTube, 2009. So it was like the beginning of 2009.
So you were
which
before,
is just after the partner program had like just started, and so it was like right around the time like Freddie Wong.
Yeah, I was about to say Rocket Jump. Yeah,
Rocket Jump, pre-Rocket Jump, Freddie Wong, and then Julian Smith, who's great comedian, and also he would just film and edit and do everything behind the scenes, and but most of the people on YouTube at that time were personalities that were just literally broadcasting themselves. They were just, turning on a webcam, dressing up like Sarah Palin or Obama or whatever was popular.
Or Britney Spears, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like anything that was kind of like to get the clicks, and they would, they would do comedy, but it was sort of unpolished, presented.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was, okay, there's all this talent. Like this is a big talent pool, but there's not really anyone guiding that talent. And so I thought my contribution could be, well, what if I bring like the filmmaking I've been, honing on my short films and music videos and local commercials. What if I brought that to the talent that's on YouTube? And so literally when I first started Totally Sketch, I would do, sketches with actors and things that I would cast, just like I was doing in San Diego.
Right.
But what I would also do is send out emails to the top YouTubers at the time and say, hey, you don't know me, but here's my body of work. 'Cause I had my short films on Vimeo. I had, things that were up that looked nice. Yeah. And I said, like, look, here's my work that I've done. Here's this new channel. I would love to produce for you a free sketch, a music video parody, or whatever. Let me handle all of the production. You would just be the talent in it. And in doing so, maybe you could also then be on my channel and we could do a sketch or something together, collaborate. So I was just like giving like, hey, you want a free sketch? You want a free music video? I wasn't asking anything of them other than, can I give you my services? And that approach worked really well.
Oh, obviously. Yeah,
because people would see my work and they saw, oh, it's not, this isn't like podunk. Like this actually looks good. Right. Like, oh, this short film played at a bunch of festivals, or, this music video, maybe I've seen that music video online. And so I just started getting, collaborating. And the first person I collaborated with was this YouTuber Alpha Cat, who was the premier Obama impersonator on YouTube. and he was like the guy. Like he was doing all of these it was, Beyonce sort of spoofs of,
Right.
like, but as Obama. And they were really funny, but he didn't have like a producer, director behind the scenes. And so we produced this whole music video for him and I wrote the first draft of the parody, but it was Jamie Foxx's "Blame It on the Alcohol." It was called "Blame It on the Economy," and it was about like the economic crisis that we were going through.
Right.
And he was like, "Oh, well, let's just get all my pals in." And so we called Lisa Nova, who did Sarah Palin at the time. I called my buddy Richard Ryan to play Joe Biden, and we just did this crazy music video. But it looked legit, and it actually got picked up, and they showed it on The View because it was such a like viral video at that time. And but from there, that kind of helped explode me on the YouTube scene. So then everybody saw that video in the community and said, whoa, who's this guy? Like, we need to hire him to bring him in. And so he can just sort of bring that filmmaking style to what we're doing. And then that's kind of, that's how I got in the club, so to speak.
So again, for everyone listening, take some notes here. You offered your services for free because you were smart enough to provide service and be of value to people who you're trying to connect with and to work with in one way, shape, or form. And all you had to offer at the moment was, I've got some skills, I've got some production, I got something that you don't have. I'm not asking for anything in return. Just let me work with you. And it worked out. It worked out fairly okay for you.
Yeah, it worked out. Well, it was funny because just like in high school, anytime I had any money, if I made any money, if I, from like grandma gave me like a check for $100 or something for, birthday, it's like any money I would get, I would put it into film equipment. So like at the time I like saved up, I got an HVX, I got a Panasonic HVX at the time was like a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And then I really saved up and, had like summer jobs and doing like short films and such. I got a Kino Flow kit. I got two 4-bank.
Just rocking, dude. You're like pimping. You're pimp.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that time of YouTube to show up with like an HVX and a Kino kit? It was like literally showing up with a freaking Steadicam and a Panavision camera, like with full 35
exactly.
on a student film back in the 80s. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. So I was like, I had a pretty, robust, because I had like I had a 3-point area lighting kit, and that was used that I ran it to the ground. Right. And then I had the Kino Flows. So within my setup for the shorts and things I was doing, I could light pretty much any scene as long as there were, no more than like 5 people in a frame. But it would look really good. So it kind of helps set things apart because lighting is such an important part of filmmaking, and you're just kind of elevating that sort of HD look. But yeah, that really helped just because people would see, and I was calling in favors left and right, kids I went to film school with, friends that I met at parties that, as a DP, someone in sound, and I would try and pay people as much as I could. But in the early days, it's like, you don't have money. So you're just, you're calling favors. You're finding collaborative, excited people around you that want to participate. And that's what I did in the early days of YouTube. And then as it, kind of spread, I still kept that mentality of keeping it small, keeping it low budget, because, you can make money doing YouTube, but the more money you spend doing it, just the less money you can make, because there's sort of a cap on the whole thing at that time, at least.
Yeah, there wasn't the millionaires weren't being made just yet on YouTube. It was pre-millionaire days at that point. But yeah, and very, very true. Now you also came up with a fairly cool idea called Maker Studios, if I'm not mistaken. You're one of the co-founders of Maker Studios.
So yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Maker Studios, but it wasn't my original idea. It was actually so from that music video shoot that I did with Alpha Cat. So Lisa Nova came, and Danny Zappin was her boyfriend at the time, and her brother Ben Donovan. They all the 3 of them all came to the shoot, and they saw what I was doing. And they said, oh, well, we got to talk to this kid because we're about to start a company and we need some filmmakers to be a part of it, because right now we have the talent. What they had been doing is they had been going out and they had this idea of creating sort of like the Saturday Night Live of YouTube. Like, what if we got the top, performers and put them all together and made a super channel, and then we all promoted that super channel and, got it to 1 million subscribers in like a day. And then what if from there we got brand deals and we kind of just helped get everyone paid? And that was sort of the concept of early day. It wasn't even called Maker then. They didn't even have a name for it. And so I remember going to Starbucks over in Venice with Danny after that shoot. And he's like, yeah, we're going to do this thing. We're going to we're gonna disrupt the whole industry. And he's just like, wearing like clothes from Target, like drinking a coffee, saying like, yeah, I got all the top YouTubers involved, and it's gonna be great. Like, you in? Like, you gonna dedicate the next year to this thing, man? And it sounded good, but it also sounded like maybe a Ponzi scheme. Maybe I'm going to be selling microwaves door to door in like a week. I have no idea. I mean, it was just like, sometimes people are all talk and you have no idea. So
in this business, I can't see, not in this business. No, stop it.
But I vetted him out, and I talked to some people around him, and it seemed legit, and it seemed like he did have these people. So I agreed. I said, okay, I'm in. I will come on, because they didn't really have any money. They didn't have much to start. It was like, we're all gonna just donate our time. We're gonna come in and invest in ourselves and collaborate on this thing. And so it was really like, if we're not all a part of this, we're not all lock step, it's not gonna happen. And I showed up, and I remember going to their house, and it was all the top people on YouTube at that time, which, this is 2009. So it's like Phil DeFranco, Shay Carl, Shane Dawson, Dave Days, Lisa Nova, there are more, but Kasim G. It was like all the people that had like hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million subscribers at that time, and getting millions of views on every video. So it was like, oh my God, I'm with the Illuminati of YouTube. And I'm like, me and Danny are like the only filmmakers on this thing. Everyone else is out there on camera talent. And, and we want to like, okay, kids, play nice. Let's all come together. Let's come up with the name. Let's figure out what our videos are going to be, because we were just making sketches. We want to start stockpiling and putting them out there. And so that was really the beginning of what Maker was. But from that process, you had so many cooks in the kitchen, and you had so much creative, kind of like top talent for the medium, that it was really difficult to get everyone to agree on what was comedy, what was the funniest thing to do, what was our style and taste. And so some people had R-rated senses of humor, some people were really family oriented. And so it was just a lot of debating of what are we even going to make. And from that kind of creative friction came this idea of, well, rather than all of us doing one channel, what if we empower each creator and give them the resources and tools and support them for whatever they want to make, rather than force everyone to work together. And that's really what Maker became, is like, how do we empower the creators to go off and make whatever they want? Because, all these people are just in their bedrooms kind of doing their thing. And if we gave them a crew, if we gave them, a production budget, if we gave them, resources, locations, producer, we could really up everything. And so that was kind of the model, and it just took off because all the top creators, they wanted to make cool looking shit. And so that's, that spread. And then it was like, hey, everybody, whoever wants to join, it just kept scaling up from there and getting attention in Hollywood, et cetera. So,
yeah, I mean, this is still in a time. So Maker Studios started in what, like 2010?
2009. It was 2000, because I started Totally Sketch in March of 2009.
Oh, wow.
And Maker started July, I think it was like, July 4th.
So that's a pretty quick. You didn't spend a whole lot of time grinding it on YouTube before things started up for you, man. You were what we like to call that the right place at the right time. It's kind of like Michael Gladwell's book Outliers. It's like that. Have you read that book?
Oh, I love that book. Yeah,
it's kind of like everyone's like, oh, they're perfect, they're geniuses, they never have to do anything. No, they were born at the right place at the right time, and they had the right skills when they showed up. Like when Robert Rodriguez shows up in '91 with El Mariachi. You can't show up now with El Mariachi because he would never even be seen. No one would even know who he was. So it was all about the specific timing. And you hit it. You were close though. You were only about 3 month window. 3 month window. This could have passed you right by, dude. This could have passed you right by. I just want you to be aware of. I want you to be aware how close you came.
Oh no, it's hashtag blessed. Hashtag blessed.
So you start 2009, and then at that point, YouTube is still fairly much of a what the heck's that thing? No one in Hollywood.
Even at the time, everyone thought we were nuts. Everyone thought the company, it was like, what, you're going to double down on YouTube? Everyone thought it was stupid.
Exactly. You're doubling down on the internet streaming thing, Netflix, whatever. So yeah, it's kind of like when Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy Netflix for $50 million and they said, no, we're good. We're good. We've got these rentals things. We're good.
Yeah, brick and mortar is the way to go.
That's the future. This internet thing's a fad. Uh, so Hollywood. When did Hollywood start taking notice, and when did you guys start making some like serious money? Because you started. I mean, it is looking back, it's a fairly genius move. It's insane at the time, but that's generally the way all these movements start. When you look at it at the time, they're like, "You were insane streaming movies over the internet. Who's gonna?" What? It seems insane. Now you look at it and go, well, that was genius. So you guys had a small version of that. Well, not that small, but a version of that in the YouTube community where you doubled down on YouTube, which I would have told you the same thing. Like, you guys are nuts. Like, no one's watching. But it seemed to work out for people like Gary Vee and those other guys who just kept making videos and nobody was watching. But one day, someone watched. And it kept going. So this small time, so you start building this up, and you start building up the accounts, and you start kind of like, I can't say it would be like an agency, would it? Like, are you're not representing them. Mm-hmm. It's what would you call it?
It was the term was multi-channel network, and so it was the first idea of, well, what if each person would own their YouTube channel. I mean, you already have a split with YouTube if you're doing ads with them. And so what Maker would do was it would kind of represent your channel. So rather than represent you as a talent, it would say, okay, your channel, we're going to help sell premium ads on this channel by talking to advertisers. If we get a brand deal that fits, like let's say Indie Film Hustle, if you were part of Maker, it'd be like, okay, we got this, film company or big movie that's coming out. It's an indie movie that Fox Searchlight's releasing. And what if we partner with you so you can, do something with the filmmakers and get paid to do it? And so it was like they were kind of brokering those deals, sort of like what an ad agency would do. Yeah, it was like multiple things. It was providing production resources. It was kind of serving as an ad agency, and then also make it being a content hub, sort of. How Netflix or a lot of places, like, they'll acquire things, but then they'll also, provide the resources. I mean, they had full production studio, they had equipment, they had, everything at Maker for, especially DIY stuff. It was DIY, but also sort of DIY plus, where they'd give you like a 3-person crew or a 5-person crew or something to go out and shoot YouTube videos.
That's insane. And how long did it take before Hollywood started taking notice?
Pretty quick. I think, within before the end of the first year, I think we were raising like some VC money and kind of big. Yeah, I know. It just started growing, and then people were leaving their jobs at kind of whether it was a big tech company or a film studio. They were coming in, like, all of a sudden we were having executives that were that just had been at Disney, or they had been at
Warner,
Sony, and and everyone all of a sudden is just like, no, I want to work at Maker. That's the hot new thing. So
and you guys were you were in the middle of the storm. I mean, that's amazing. It's amazing. Like, you guys were and there was nobody around you. There was no competition. There was nothing that even was close to what you guys were doing at the time.
Things start popping up pretty quick thereafter. So, and it's hard to say like what the first thing. I think Maker might have been the first multi-channel network that really had done this. And then very soon around that time was Awesomeness TV, which I don't know if you remember.
I've heard of Awesomeness.
Yeah, they focused on like kind of more specifically teen-oriented content, because they really were trying to get bought by like a Nickelodeon or a Disney Channel or something. Like, they wanted content that was safe, like kind of age appropriate. And Maker was a little bit Wild West of, we're not going to censor you. Whatever you want to do, that's your thing.
And of course that attracted all the talent, because there was no censorship.
Yeah, exactly. There's no censorship. And we're not going to try and control you. Yeah, you can just continue what you're doing, and we're going to empower you. And so I think that model really appealed to, every level of YouTuber, top, bottom, whatever. In 2014 is when Disney came in and
I heard something about that. There was a small company called Disney that decided to buy you guys, and it was it wasn't in the news at all at the time. But if I do remember correctly, and I don't like to talk money on the show, but it's pretty publicly known that the Maker Studios was purchased for $450 million cash, and then with a performance bonus up to almost $1 billion. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how much is public of like where it landed or whatever, but I
Yeah.
think those numbers are in the ballpark for sure.
Yeah, that's not a bad deal for young guys who just kind of like got the HVX 200 and the Airy kit out
I
and
know.
shot with some YouTubers. That definitely sent shockwaves through the industry. I remember when that happened. It was about a year before I launched Indie Film Hustle. I launched Indie Film Hustle in 2015.
Oh yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, wow, and I sound like an old fart, but like, oh yeah, this YouTube thing's really kind of starting to blow up
Oh,
now. I should have stayed on there. Like, what was I thinking? But that I have to ask you, man, what was that like, man? You were like, when Disney's like, okay, here's a check. And I'm not going to ask, percentages or anything like that, but you obviously did fairly okay being one of the co-founders of it. So what was that day like as a filmmaker, man? Like, Disney is buying you at a very,
yeah.
a very good rate, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, it was pretty outrageous. Well, it's interesting because we started in 2009, and I had been like day to day with the company until about 2011. Like about 2011, I was like there, kind of making, helping everyone, making videos, kind of working on different, branded content and interact. I was doing a lot of interactive actually, and but my day to day wasn't really, it didn't really go on beyond 2011. I was still my channel. I eventually brought my channel Totally Sketch into the network, and then would work on as a director for hire for them and kind of consulting and things. But I wasn't really in the thick of it, so it was fun to actually see. Every time I would go there, it was like, oh, we're going to a new office. Oh, we got a soundstage. Oh, we got a whole block of offices.
Right.
And then it's like, and then you're trying to make your YouTube videos there, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, James Franco's in today. It's like, hey, Snoop Dogg, he's going to shoot 4 videos, and it's like, wait, what? What's going on?
Right.
And then I was, because I was, very filmmaker oriented. They would, they partnered with the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah.
I remember meeting with I remember they flew us out there for doing promotion and kind of cross promoting Tribeca, and they were like, oh, do you want to do, we want to do like a 48-hour like film thing at Tribeca. Do you want to make a 48-hour film in Tribeca? I said, sure. I'm like, oh, it's like a bunch of groups. It's like, no, just you. And so you'll just do it, and we'll have the full support of the festival, and then we're going to screen it at the festival. And it's like, oh, okay. And so I don't know, I'm like 23, 22 years old, and like we're running around New York, and literally like they had like Robert De Niro make a video being like, okay, Michael, here's your, here are the things you're going to do in your 48-hour video. And it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it was just, this is a small group of friends in a Venice apartment. And now it's like, they somehow got Robert De Niro roped into this thing, like talking to me. Like,
hey, can you imagine?
Outrageous.
Can you imagine that conversation with Robert? Like, it's like, all right, so we're going to do this thing with these guys called Maker Studio. They're on YouTube. And like, there has to be a moment when Robert De Niro goes, what is YouTube? What is this what's going on? I don't understand this. He's like, Bobby, you got to do this. Just trust me. These guys are big. Just get on the camera. And I'm sure. He's like, all right, who's this guy's name? Michael. All right, Michael.
I know. It just kind of, it felt really surreal. So
that's amazing.
It was sort of like, just kind of had to accept it. Like at a certain point I let go of, how did this happen, and just sort of say, okay, yeah, all right.
and we're going to roll with it.
We're gonna roll with it, yeah. And but definitely, and just to be clear, I don't have like $100 million or $10 million.
Fair enough.
I didn't like come out like a bandit and I don't own like Johnny Depp level islands and things,
Got you.
So, just know that. But I definitely benefited from the sale, as did everyone who was a part of it.
Sure.
And the great thing about it was it set us up in the industry as, look at these guys. They bet on themselves. They went out there and invested in this kind of idea that nobody really thought would be anything. And look at it now. And so it just sort of gave you that sort of like creative capital to then go out and say, oh, I want to make a film. I want to do this. You just got people's attention a little bit more, because you had sort of a proof of concept of saying, we started this from nothing and look where it got to. Moving forward, whether it's just you want to do a web series, you want to do a movie, you want to do something, it's, people take notice because, it did so well.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. As filmmakers, we're always looking for ways to level up production value of our projects and speed up our workflow. This is why I created Enigma Elements, your one-stop shop for film grains, color grading LUTs, vintage analog textures like VHS and CRT images, smoke, fog textures, DaVinci Resolve presets, and much more. Check out enigmaelements.com and use the coupon code IFH10 to get 10% off your order. And now back to the show.
So
you're kind of like
that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from the whole experience.
I feel like Maker was kind of like the Google or the Facebook of the film industry. It was like this little startup that kind of shook things up, and it was kind of leading the way into a new technology or a new space within the industry that nobody else saw coming. Kind of like, when Facebook came in and did their thing, or Google came in like, oh, we're going to do a search engine. Oh, right. Yeah. Search engine. Sure. Like everybody else, like Alta Vista and Lycos. Got it. Yeah. And then of course it turned into what it did. And similar to you guys, you were kind of like the Google of the film industry in a sense, because it was all internet based and it was a bunch of crazy kids somewhere doing some crazy stuff, and it all turned out until finally the big boys finally took notice. But that also sent the message to the whole industry, is like, when someone like Disney does spend that kind of money on a company that's outside the norm, it sent to the industry, hey, this is where we're going. This is the future. This is not, this is not a joke, because we're not spending this kind of money on a little bit of a fad, if you will.
Yeah, well, all the film studios, I think, reached a point where they weren't investing in digital. They weren't investing in online content, but they were seeing like, hey, on our sheets every month or year, like quarter, we're looking and seeing how much we're spending on digital advertising. We're seeing how much we are spending on a company like Maker to promote our stuff. Wouldn't it make sense for us to have our own digital shingle here, so we don't have to pay somebody else? Like, shouldn't we already have that? Like, why are we paying them to tell like they're making it was some kind of confusing loop for them. And so I think they ran the numbers and they said, well, how much would it cost for us to start our own? And they ran those numbers and said, okay, it's going to cost billions. What if we just acquire these companies that have been doing it independently that seem to have success, and then we will just absorb all of their knowledge, what they've learned, their tactics, their crew, and we'll go from there. And so that's what happened. And then you saw that with Maker, you saw it with Awesomeness and Full Screen, a bunch of other places, and that each studio kind of was eyeing the different media companies and just sort of plucking them up and saying, okay, now we have our branch. And I think that's what really sparked it, was that move of the eyeballs, especially of like the 18 to 24 and teenager demographic. Like everyone, they weren't watching TV anymore. They were just watching YouTube. They were just addicted to online content. And so they needed to be in the game, so to just market their movies, if nothing else.
Right. And it's kind of like what Netflix did for the business. Well, now everybody has a streaming service coming out. I own a streaming service. I have my own streaming service, for God's sakes. It was all because of Netflix, and they opened up the doors. And now everybody's like, wait a minute, we got to jump on this train. This is kind of where the future is going to be. So, and now how did you parlay, from Maker into the world of like legit directing, and I don't mean that in a derogatory statement at all.
No.
You know what I mean by legit, like true indie auteur filmmaker, if you will, kind of like the guys you were looking up to when you were coming up, like the Robert Rodriguez's and stuff. How did you turn from making sketch comedies on YouTube to like, hey, I did the Thinning and the whole that whole series, and another movie that you just came out with, Funny Story, and all these kind of real legit films with like budgets and like actors.
I know. I keep fooling them. I don't know how.
I don't exactly.
But what happened was, when we were at Maker, I really, we'd been doing sketches for a few years. It was like 2010, and I really wanted to do, I wanted to figure out how am I going to make a feature? How am I going to get in? And I would meet with people, and they would say, "Oh, it's great that you've done sketches and had this, millions of views," and that didn't really matter. They, it was like, "Oh, well, where's the proof of concept of your first feature? Why haven't you done a first feature already? Show it to us, and then we'll talk." Yeah. So it was like, okay, this is the chicken and the egg.
Oh, I know.
How do I get the job if I don't have the movie? If I don't have the job, and then how am I going to make money? And so at that point, I lived pretty frugally. I was just saving up, and I had a lot of success with Totally Sketch and Maker, and just, everything was kind of going with brand deals, and, they're just paying a ton of money for doing, a couple days worth of work. And so I was just saving all this money. I'm not going on vacation. I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just saving it. And so at a certain point at Maker, this guy, Glasgow Phillips, who had written on South Park and a bunch of other cool things, he on spec wrote this idea for what became Smiley, which was a horror film that was my first feature that I directed. And he wrote it as an idea of, well, what if we take our resources at Maker and just, rather than just do a bunch of YouTube videos, we spend 3 weeks and go shoot a feature. Why don't we do that? And Maker was interested at the time, and they said, okay, well, Gallagher can direct it. And so all of a sudden I'm like attached to direct a movie. I'm super excited. And, because at that point, it wasn't about, oh, I have this really personal story I got to tell. It was, I got to make my first feature. I wanted to make the movie more than it mattered what the exact movie was. Like, I wanted to just show what I could do and just get out there and just, start playing in the big leagues and playing in the field and making something, feature length. And so what happened was Maker almost did it, and then they didn't. And then they said, we're really focused on, the short form, but if you guys want to go off and find the money for this thing, go for it. And so then I became obsessed with just getting Smiley made. And so we'd go around and we started pitching it and doing that whole thing. And we had some interest from places, but they were like, wait, you want to cast YouTube stars in this movie? You want to cast people who have millions of fans online to come see a movie? Like, good luck. Like, we don't see it.
Oh, these people don't see any. I mean, like, you would think that you're part of Maker Studios, which was crazy in the first place. And they're like, hey guys, we have another idea. You don't listen to that. Like, and I'm assuming the budget wasn't 100 million. So like, why wouldn't you take that chance?
No, I know. We were like, we can do this for, not like by your standards, nothing, but, like a couple $100,000 max. Like, we could do the whole thing. It's gonna be great. Everyone's signed on,
Right.
And it was just sort of crickets. Like, people were like, no, it hasn't been done, hasn't been proven yet. And so we said, all right, assholes, we're just going to go make this movie. And so literally at that point, my producer, Michael Warmser, who had worked at Maker as head of production, he had gone off from then, and we had just been like dedicated to this movie. And I said, okay, Warmser, if we're going to make this thing independently, what's the lowest number we can do it for? Like, get the movie in the can. Like, what's the number? Mm-hmm. And so he crunched the numbers and did it. And I think at the time he's like, I think we can get it in the can for like 120,000 if everyone's getting paid, and we're shooting in 15 days and the whole thing.
Right,
and I said, okay, that's all the money I have. Greenlit, let's go.
Right.
And so then from then on, we just went and made the movie just, self-funded. We didn't look for any more money. We just, said, okay, this is the resources we got. Let's get this thing in the can. Let's shoot it. And so it was just kind of a mad rush in 2011 in the summer to just go make this movie. And so we did. We shot it 15 days. We brought on the best crew we could. We just, kind of went out and made it. And from there, the movie, we then raised a little bit more money for post, and then for the release, because what ended up happening is we partnered with AMC Independent, which they have this great program where they will release your film theatrically if you can provide the marketing and if they like the movie. And so what we did was we presented this whole plan to them with the YouTube stars, with everything. And we said, we're going to go promote this thing. We're going to, we want as many theaters as you can give us, and we will get it out there and look at how many impressions we can get from videos, from trailers. Because our trailer went out, we put our trailer out like after we shot the movie in November, and it got like 1 million views in a day. And then after that, it was like 10 million views in a week. And now it's, I think, at like 40 million views or something crazy. And so it was just like, it kept exploding. And so Hollywood started calling, and people were just freaking out, being like, what is this movie? How come we never heard of it? Wait, is it a horror movie? Like, YouTube star, like, so then that really just kind of became sort of beacon for the industry, and saying like, who's Michael Gallagher? What? You made a movie? I don't understand. YouTube stars?
And you're like, I was in your office 6 months ago, ass.
literally we were doing that. And so but we did it all independent. So that was really my film school, was taking is Smiley from the development process through production, through post, and then through marketing, distributing, and getting it out there. And we did a 28 screen theatrical release through AMC Independent, and it was in 14 markets. And then it came out, and then we sold territories at AFM through our sales agent, and it played theatrically in like Italy and the Philippines and Japan, and it was just like this kind of crazy indie phenomenon. Like it's surprising how well the movie did, like how far it got out there, because even today, like around Halloween time, if you go like on Instagram and go hashtag Smiley, people in Argentina are dressing up as Smiley, like still, like from last year. It's like thousands of people I keep seeing every year, like people sending me photos and things of just the reach of this character is kind of crazy. And this was just a really small indie made for under $200,000. So it was pretty wild. So
now, did you have any other?
That helped prove that as an indie filmmaker, we can still have a big impact. You don't necessarily need, big budget and, huge stars. Like you can work with the team you have around you and really, explode it out.
Did you have any other ancillary revenue streams for that movie, like T-shirts, hats, other things like that? Did you have any merch at the time?
We should have. We didn't. But we should have.
Left money on the table, sir. Left money on the table.
Yeah, definitely money on the table. But no, the movie did great, and people saw it. And even though it wasn't like, and it's funny because even though it got out so far, I didn't do everything independently, and I really should have, because what happened is my domestic distributor that I brought on for home video and stuff, they screwed us.
Oh, shocking! I can't again. Shocking.
And just when we're calling them on it, they go bankrupt.
Oh, so, I've never heard of a story like that. It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. It's never happened before. But and so there's some heartbreaking lessons and things you learn along the way of like, oh, we did all the work, we got the muscle out there, and then just at the finish line, someone is like, thank you so much, and
we'll take it from here. Did you
cash the check? Did
you have a clause that if they go bankrupt, the rights go back to you? You didn't? Was there a clause in there?
No. So, I know we're a few years away. We're gonna get it back, so it's gonna be okay.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, because it's a thing. All right, so you'll get it back eventually.
Yeah. So it'll be all right.
But still, man.
But that process, the good, the bad, the ugly of making your own movie and distributing it and doing everything, that has those lessons I'm still learning, because even with my new movie, Funny Story, it almost feels like that was my first feature, because what I did was I told a personal story. It was something that I had to tell, and I did it with friends, and I did it as small as I could, just like with Smiley. But Smiley wasn't a personal story. It was almost like I hired myself for a job. It was like I saw an opportunity, and I took the opportunity and tried to make it the best and the biggest it could. But it didn't have any personal connection to me. It felt like I felt like multiple people. Like I'm the financier hiring the director, who's then going to produce it and then going to distribute it. So it was like I had different hats on all the time.
And you were fighting with yourself constantly.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of like a creative thing, it's like I'm really proud of the movie and what we've done with it. But in terms of what I can do as a storyteller and the kind of movies that I want to make, it didn't really line up with that. And I think people saw that when they write reviews or whatever, but you can't control that aspect of it. You kind of just do your thing and put it out there. But that's the other thing. I think people thought we had a huge budget for Smiley, because we had billboards in Times Square, we had kind of promotion all around Los Angeles, and big release. But it was Michael Wormser and I. It was like these two little producers just going out and calling Clear Channel and saying, hey, can we get a billboard? Hey, we have no money, what can we do? And then people were just wanting to help because they thought it was a cool idea, and why not? And they had the inventory, so we were able to make a pretty big splash with a couple of pennies.
And then you started making some films directly for YouTube Red as well, like The Thinning.
Yeah, so The Thinning came about in an interesting way, because post Smiley, I had all these. I was repped at. I'm still repped at UTA and Management 360 and all these great places, because they had seen Smiley and they'd seen the trailer and all the kind of ruckus we were creating, and they said, okay, we want to bet on this guy. So they put me in rooms with every studio, all these production companies, and they're like, what do you want to do next? And I'm like, I'm exhausted. I have no idea. What do you guys got? And they're like, all right, well, why don't you go write a script and then call us?
Oh, God.
So I was like, okay. that's another lesson learned. Always have your next thing ready.
Next three things ready.
Yeah, next 3 things. Definitely. You're going to have options.
Because they won't like the first one, but they might like the third one. You never know. And you're not going to get back in that room again easily.
It's not that easy, yeah. And so I, had that water bottle tour of meeting with everybody without a movie.
Or without a project. Yeah, we basically...
nothing to pitch.
It's Hollywood masturbation, as we like to call it.
Yeah, so I got a lot of free waters. It was great. And then, but from that, I learned, okay, it's not about me coming over and seeing what they have. They want to see what I got. I'm the generator. So, okay, that's how, as a filmmaker, you need to look at these things. And so what I did was I spent the next couple of years just head down writing. And so I enlisted Steve Green, who's my best friend, and we had been doing all these sketches and writing, comedy bits. I said, hey, let's write movies. We can figure it out. And so, and because I'd never finished a feature from scratch. With Smiley, I came on it and did some rewrites and polishes and kind of adjusted some things, but it didn't start and end with me. And so that was a new process. So Steve and I just kind of like head down, read every screenwriting book there is, and we just started going. And so everyone was saying, maybe write something, maybe write from a personal place. So the first thing we wrote was Internet Famous, which was a parody of all these YouTube stars and the ego trip and the ridiculousness of the YouTube world. So we wrote that as like a mockumentary comedy, kind of like a Best in Show and Tone or Spinal Tap. And and everyone was really excited about that. So we partnered with Lakeshore, and they financed the movie through their Off the Dock, which was their digital division. And they said, okay, well, what you did with Smiley, let's try and do that with Internet Famous, but do it with YouTube stars making fun of themselves. And it's a comedy. It's all lining up. So then we just but now it's a story that it's like I have some basis in because I generated the thing. Yeah. And so we put this great cast together and went out and shot it. And then Netflix bought it. And so it's out on Netflix now. And that was cool. That budget was under $1 million, but it was definitely a huge step up from where I'd gone before. And then at the same time, when we were writing all those scripts, like you said, to have 3 projects ready, we had written 5 scripts, and we took out, we were taking them out and seeing what the agents were responding to. And the other one we wrote was The Thinning, which was, dystopian teen thriller. And so we came up with the idea for that. It was sort of like what if we created a Hunger Games event, but for YouTube? What if we created like this big kind of spectacle but it was really just aimed to never come out in theaters, but just like be an event on the internet? Because most people, they were just dumping things that they couldn't get distribution on the internet, as opposed to like, what if you make a spectacle for the internet? And so we thought that would be cool. And so we pitched that around, and then Legendary, they had started a digital division, and they loved the script. And so, and it was funny because when I met with them, they were only interested in series. And then there had been like 1 or 2 other like digital movies that came out post Smiley that started getting like good press of like, oh, they're making money, they can do this. As soon as they heard that they can make money making features for the internet, all of a sudden our phone rang.
Oh, well, of course, because it's like, oh, how much is it? How much do you need? That's coffee money. Sure, here.
Exactly. So we went off and got to make The Thinning with Legendary, and then they sold it to YouTube Red at the time, which was, I think they had just started that as like a premium content division, and then it became like the biggest movie that they had ever, biggest show or anything that they had ever released, like in terms of viewership. Like it just exploded, and so immediately they greenlit a sequel. So we did Thinning New World Order, and it was just kind of like all of a sudden, all this hard work and like putting your head down writing, it's like, oh, now we're just making movies it's like we were doing like 2 movies every other year. It was like, just, oh my God, we're doing 2 a year. It's like going from 0 to 1,000. It's crazy.
Right.
But it was fun. I mean, it's been a kind of a wild process to go from having everyone question you and kind of like not understand what you're going for, to then everyone calling and saying like, how do we work with you? How, sending scripts, sending digital stars over, being like, can you put them in a movie? We got $300,000. Can we make a movie with this kid? It's like, what? That's not really how you make a movie, but
oh, they do. They trust me. They do make movies just like that.
I know. I had to turn some of those down.
You know what's funny, because I'm looking forward in the future, and you're going to be one day 60, and you're going to look back and you're going to be like, yeah, I was there at YouTube when it started. Yeah. And I was just like, yeah. And you tell these stories and people are like, you mean there was a world when there was no video on the internet? Like, is that a world I would want to live in? I don't understand. One day, your generation is very interesting. Like our generation, my generation's the Gen X are like, we're the in-betweeners. We're like, we had one foot in the old and one foot in the new. So like we were around before the internet, but we definitely were there when it popped. And you have no idea. Like you said, you were born in '88. I was going into high school in '88. So there's a slight difference in perspective. But it's fascinating. That's why I love talking to young filmmakers like yourself, especially ones that have had a lot of success in what they're doing. Because I'm always fascinated with stories, like how these different windows that open up, and then how you leverage that window to take it to the next step and so on. Which brings me to your new movie, Funny Story, that I've actually been seeing billboards all around town. I've been like, as I drive by, and I'm like, and that's why when it came through, I was like, oh, Funny Story. Yeah, that's that movie I keep seeing everywhere on like every second bus thing I see is there. So I don't know who's your marketing PR people, but they're doing a good job spending that money because it's out there. No question. So because this one looks more serious. It looks a lot more serious. It's not Smiley. It's definitely not InstaFamous. Yeah. It's definitely a little bit more like a serious filmmaker. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I think after doing, I don't know, I guess it was like 4 or 5 of these kind of YouTube sort of digital features, I was known as the digital guy. And so I could get into any room if, as long as it was starring someone with X amount of followers, I was up for that job.
Right.
And
good place to be.
That was interesting. And it's a good place to be. It's a great place to be. But also there's a frustration because I never intended for that to become, sort of the branded digital guy. I wanted to be more, just a filmmaker amongst all filmmakers. And I was just working in a specific medium and kind of trying to break open this area that we thought that we thought needed to be open. And so with Funny Story, it was kind of a going back to the filmmakers that I grew up on and the people that inspired me to first start, and try and tell a story that didn't require you have to cast somebody that has X amount of followers, that has this many Instagram things, and it's like this. It's not about the result. I want to do something that wasn't result oriented. That was really just, we're going to go make this because we're all passionate about the story and the characters, and I want to show as a filmmaker what I can do. And so that was the spirit of making Funny Story. So we wrote this movie, and I was really inspired by like the Duplass brothers and Joe Swanberg and these guys that were just like going off, they call it mumblecore or whatever, but it's like go off without really a script, maybe just an outline. We're just going to go, make this.
That's how I made that's how I made my first 2 features. I love this.
Yeah, which is great. And so I started with, okay, well, what can I do? I need limited location. I started thinking back to like, the YouTube days of like, how do I just go off and make something?
Right.
And so I was like looking at all the resources I had and the people I knew, and I started writing parts to the people around me, and really talented actors that I had kind of gotten the pleasure to work with. And putting this thing together, I outlined a full feature. It was like maybe 30 pages. It was like a script that just didn't have any dialogue. It was
a scriptment. It's a technical term. Scriptment. Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So I wrote a scriptment.
Yes.
And it was the whole movie, but it had no dialogue. And I was like, I was a little cocky because they had made some other movies, and like, okay, I think I can get funded off a scriptment. It can't be that hard. And everyone was like, no dialogue. Interesting.
And your last name's not Duplass. Not going to work, buddy.
You've never done this before. I don't know. I don't know about this. And then they started making me kind of question it. And I was like, shit, maybe I should add some dialogue to this thing. Maybe. And so I started thinking about, well, if I really go and do this on the budget that I think I could just go off and make it, I think it's too much money where I want to risk the idea of maybe I don't have the answer, because I think it is sort of like jumping out of an airplane without the dialogue, because you really have to trust in everyone around you. And I just got cold feet, honestly, about trying to do that. And I still want to do it someday. But at that time, I was like, I don't think I'm ready to do no dialogue scriptment. Go make it. See what happens.
It takes a certain amount of balls, sir. It does truly take a certain amount of balls to do that.
So my balls were up in my body and saying,
They haven't
write
dropped yet.
finish the script.
They haven't
And
dropped yet.
so then I called Steve Green. I was like, Steve, I got a scriptment. I want to turn into a script. Let's do this. And so we powered together. I think it was like 4 or 5 days of just like 12-hour sessions of us just locked in a room, just acting it out, writing dialogue, making each other crack up. And then I had the full script, and then it was like a 90-something page script. And we went off, and I just cast people that I'd either worked with before or met with that I knew were just going to be passionate about this thing. The crew, everyone got paid, but it was from the spirit of, we don't know what's going to happen with this thing. We're just going to go and do it. And that set is the best set experience I've ever had, because everyone was there for the right reason. I'd never actually felt that before with everything else I'd done. There maybe been a few people who were really excited about a project, but on a certain level, like your crew, your cast, like they're making a lot of stuff. It's hard to get that genuine enthusiasm of like, this, we're doing this because we love it. We love making movies. We love this story. And that set, it felt like everyone was there for the right reason. They had this spirit and this excitement. And I don't know, it shows in the movie, I think. And so we went out and we submitted to film festivals. And last year, we've been touring with the film. It got into the Slamdance Film Festival in their Beyond category, because I'd already done more than it was my first feature. And so from there, it kind of like other film festivals were reaching out, and then we just kind of toured with it for the last year. And so it played, like in won crazy awards like Breckenridge Film Festival and Woods Hole and Washington West. I mean, there's just like a million like these regional film festivals that just the movie was really resonating with audiences. And we were like, it would play at places and then they'd add screenings and it would sell out. And it was just like there was this weird buzz about the movie just within these communities. We weren't really promoting it. It didn't have any there wasn't much to promote on the film festival circuit. You can put flyers up and things, but we didn't even really do that. It was just word of mouth. So it was kind of spreading, and other film festivals were asking us to play. And then this last year, we got it out with Blue Fox Entertainment, and we did a few screen theatrical day and date with VOD and such. And the movie's just, it's gotten great reviews. It's just been really warmly received. And it's, it's this little movie that we went off and made that, we didn't have a marketing muscle behind it. And so all I did was, the advertising that you've seen, that's just me calling up places I did with Smiley saying like, hey, we made another indie. Do you have any inventory? What do you got? Like, what kind of deal? And so, we just call these places up, and then, got billboards and got, bus benches and all that kind of stuff.
Can I ask you, I don't know if you're able to tell me this or not, but what do those things kind of cost? I have no idea what a bus bench costs or like those, like I've always seen them and you always think they're like these like 50,000 or like crazy expensive. Like, is it literally affordable to do that? Like if you have a little bit of money?
If you have a little bit of money, it is affordable. Yeah. I think I don't have the exact numbers offhand, but I do know that, we negotiated with the companies and just, we said, look, we're not, Lionsgate. We're a small indie, movie coming out. So if there's inventory that you have, or if there's a deal you can cut us, like let us know, because we'd love to consider, working with you guys. And so I think for bus benches, I think the company we went with, they do a minimum of 10. And so you have to get 10 of them. But per unit, they're not crazy expensive. It's like $300 or something per bench. So I think for like 3,000, around 3,000, I think you can get 10 benches in LA.
For a month?
For a month. Yeah, for 4 weeks.
That's insane.
It's insane.
Oh, guys, anyone listening, you're going to start seeing Indie Film Hustle banners all over Los Angeles. I'm just saying. You're going to be like, is that a podcast with a bus bench? Like, is that a thing? I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to be a thing. That's insane.
But that's the thing is like, I don't know. I guess I was never afraid of like just trying to Google something or looking and just asking. Yeah, because the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, no, get lost. and I've had that happen to me, and that's okay. And it's like, there's a few outdoor advertising companies that are not filmmaker friendly, and that's okay. But then there's other ones that say, you have a connection with somebody and you tell them your story, and they want to help you. I mean, people want to help each other. It's just, so rarely are we offering our help to others. Are we asking? It's hard to even ask for help sometimes. But if you if you can be willing to accept whatever the answer is, then you might be surprised by people, because I don't know, there's other passionate filmmakers out there, maybe have a desk job at a marketing, at an ad agency, and they're like, yeah, I want to help you.
In
so
LA?
I want to be in that position someday.
In LA? Never. I can't believe that. What I find fascinating is that you are known for being online, being on YouTube, understanding online marketing, understanding online branding, and yet you use legacy advertising methods as part of your whole overall, plan. Why do you? What kind of return? What ROI do you think you get from these kind? Like, would it make more sense to spend those $3,000 on focused Facebook ads or YouTube ads, as opposed to, are you going to get a better ROI on that than bus benches? Look, bus benches are cool as hell, and I'm seriously thinking of getting some. But but on an ROI standpoint, like, what is it really going to do?
Well, there's different ways to think about it. If you're just concerned about ROI, or just like the kind of money you're going to make, from sales, I don't know that outdoor there's like a 1-to-1 of, a bus bench equals this many downloads or rentals.
No, of course. Yeah. But, it's uncontrollable.
I do have a theory about advertising and about selling something, which is that if I haven't heard of it, if I haven't seen it out in the wild, then it's harder for me to, as a consumer, just to watch a movie, to listen to a song, to stuff. Like, I need to have almost been bombarded by it in 3 different ways. Like, if I saw it out in public, I saw a pre-roll ad on YouTube, and then I see it on Apple TV on, as like a premium movie, then it's like, oh, I've seen this before, and then I'm going to check it out. As opposed to something like I've never seen, and all of a sudden it's just on iTunes or it's just on Amazon. I think it's a harder purchase for me to just go in blind and just search around to see what's out there.
It's true.
Whereas if I have the impression I've seen the key art a few different times, and especially different mediums, I think really help. Like, and I really toyed with this, and I think next time I'll do it, is getting pre-rolls on podcasts. Because so many people are listening to podcasts and they're in your ear.
I'm available. I'm available, sir. I'm available. You let me know how you want to cut that deal. We'll make that work.
But I mean, it's like, oh, in your ear, you're hearing Funny Story, May 24th on, in theaters and on demand. And then you're seeing it. And then it's like, now you're on Apple TV, and it's like, oh, I've been told it. I watched it. I saw a trailer, and now the movie is, trending or whatever. It's in, recent discoveries. Now I'm going to watch it.
You know what this funny thing is, though, what your theory is exactly happened, because it happened to me. Because when your poster showed up in my email box, I said, oh, that's that movie that I saw on the bus bench around the corner. And it added a sense, before I even knew who you were, and delved into who you are and your backstory, I automatically associated, oh, this is a real movie. Yep. Purely because of the legacy marketing that you were using. Like, because I know the impression in my mind is a YouTube ad is not going to cost nearly as much as a bus bench.
Yep.
Not nearly as much as a billboard, for God's sakes. That's what the studios do. So you already, for your small little indie movie, you've already put yourself in the box with the studios because of that specific move. So it is working. It worked on me.
That's great.
That was the first time because honestly, I was like, oh yeah, this, and I saw that poster. I'm like, oh, let me dig in a little bit, because I get bombarded with requests to be on the show all the time. But when I saw that, it stopped me. And then I was like, oh, let me dig in and let me investigate who's Michael Gallagher. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. This makes a lot of sense now. But it was the initial. But honestly, it was the initial looking up, and that's not one billboard, by the way. I've seen it like 3-4 times all around LA. So it works. It works.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad it's working. And yeah, just so you know, it's not like, oh, we hired some big company to do this. It's like, no, it's me. It's me making phone calls. Like, it's
You're still hustling, baby.
It's still hustling. You can't get to that point. I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point where I'm like, oh, I have a whole staff and everyone's just doing everything. It's like, no, I'm creating marketing assets. I'm cutting trailers.
Did you make the poster? Did you make the poster?
I didn't make the poster, but
okay.
I know my limits.
It's a nice poster. That's what I'm saying. It's a nice poster. Yeah. It was good.
But the bus benches I did make. So I took the key art and then I remixed the elements. So I can do that. You know what I mean? So it's like I can I still want to, I still have that indie film spirit in me of like, I'm just going to go and do this.
That's great, man. That's awesome. Now, I wanted to ask you something in regards to this whole influencer phenomenon, which is basically going on right now and has been going on for many years. Do you think that this is going to, like in 20 years, are we going to talk about influencers anymore? Like, do you think there's a window that's going to close? I mean, I think the window to be an influencer is tighter now than it was 5 years ago on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. There's specific places where certain people are making their name. Remember all the guys at Vine and girls at Vine, they were like, oh, I'm a huge Vine person. Well, Vine's gone. And then you're just like, let's just post them all on YouTube and see what happens. Like, it's like, So where do you think, I'd love to hear your perspective, but where do you think this influencer phenomenon is, like influence marketing, which is, you guys kind of, you were one of the first people to actually do influencer marketing, and now it's become a thing. What do you think, how it's going to pan out in the future?
Yeah, I think you see someone like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and I think we're not far off from him just releasing his own movies on his own app or something, because you have somebody who is just a brand. And it doesn't matter if he's doing Ballers on HBO or if he's in, Jumanji or something. It's like at a certain point when he makes enough money, he doesn't need the studio. Yeah. And so you have a brand, and it's like if you like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, like you either subscribe to his app, or it's like he can just market directly to his fans. And so I think the follower kind of concept on all these different social media platforms, I think it might collapse into an app or something like that, where everyone just has a base, and then they're just, providing content to that base, and they can self-fund. And whether that's Kim Kardashian or, Alex Ferrari or whoever.
No, first of all, stop putting my name in the same sentence with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or, God forbid, Kim K. But please stop that. I've got you fooled, sir.
But you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't matter what your brand is, but I think each person, what influencers are, they are a brand. And what do they sell? It's themselves. It's something about them. And some people, you could argue, have talent. Some people don't, and they're just personalities. But they can attract people, and it could be from anything. But I think the collapsing of the different platforms will happen at some point. And I think it'll take someone, and it could be, you have these traditional folks like Tom Cruise or something, or it could be, some kid on YouTube with just doing this whole thing. And it's like, we learn that, like, okay, all of a sudden PewDiePie has his whole little empire off his app, and he's making $40 million a month or something. And everyone's like, wait, what? And then it'll take something like that happening where then everyone jumps in.
It's not that far away, man.
We're far off.
Not at all.
We're far off. Yeah.
I mean, I literally have a streaming service, which is an app which you download. Yeah. I'm not making $40 million a month. Let everybody know that I'm not even close to those many zeros. I'm not even close to that many zeros. Trust me. But it is at a certain point. That is something where I think someone like Tom Cruise, who's a little bit more traditional as far as his age and where he came from, I don't think he's just not there. But I think The Rock is that hybrid. He's the guy who came up. He's like the middle. He's in the middle. He's like, I'm before but I'm embracing it, and I'm built for this medium. And he's built for the medium where the young and the old are following him, and that's who you need. Someone
but even like
him.
Will Smith jumped into YouTube. Yeah, he's like legit he's killing it. A YouTuber.
he is, right? He's like literally like on the set of Bad Boys 3 with like the guy who did Bel Air, that great trailer for Bel Air. Like if you saw that, right?
It's so great.
It's so good for everyone it's like the dark, down and dirty, like Eminem style, 8 Mile style of Prince of Bel Air, and it's so freaking good. And you got Will Smith like talking to that filmmaker on a balcony in Miami, just like, "Hey man, we're here." Like, are you vlogging, Will Smith? Are you vlogging, Will Smith?
He's a weekly vlogger. Yeah,
he is, and he does these motivational things. So like he saw it. He's like, "Oh, I got to jump on this. This is where it's going to be." And he can leverage his traditional fame to a platform like that, where people like me would follow him, and younger people who watch The Genie will follow him.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that in the future, and whether that's people jumping onto pre-existing platforms and just utilizing their celebrity to kind of bring people in. But I do think, with the subscription models and the apps and things, I think we're kind of getting to a place where if they could have it all under one hub, and official
Apple's trying to do
websites
that. Apple's trying
great.
to do that.
Apple's trying to do that, and I think it'll take a really big personality to just triple down on themselves and do it, who has the capital. And maybe it's a company investing in the rock industries, just like doing it that way. I don't know. But I do think
I think his company's called $7. So, because he had $7, he had $7 when he
$7 when he started. Yeah. So
no, this is fascinating. And I have to ask this question because I think people would hurt me if I didn't ask this question. Do you have any advice on building a YouTube channel? In today's world, not in 2009, not 2010, in today's world.
That's a good question. Well, I think there's things that you probably heard that I think still apply, which is you got to come up with a brand, whether that's yourself or if you're a gamer, gaming, or if it's indie film, it's tips. Be consistent to whatever your brand is, because it's like when you go to the grocery store and you want orange juice, if you take an orange juice container and there's milk in it, doesn't matter how good the milk is, people want orange juice. So, like, in terms of branding, like, I think that's really important for YouTube. Like, you think of it like a product that you are selling, and it's you, it's your story, it's, your films, your content. And so if you create that brand, then set a schedule and be consistent to that schedule, like live or die by that schedule. So if it's weekly, if it's daily, just do something manageable that you can commit to. And before you launch, I would stockpile at least a month. So that way you're not like, if something comes up, then you're not screwed. Or, having to be like, hey guys, sorry, I couldn't post this week. Like, I don't think people like watching that. Just do it, just like commit to it and do it. And then also don't be afraid to collaborate with people who are similar to you. Don't be like, oh, everyone's competition. It's like, I wouldn't think of everyone as competition. I think of them more as your peers and collaborators. And there's maybe a way that you can provide value to them. So in the same way that I was just cold reaching out to personalities and saying like, hey, let me make you a star of your own, video creation that I will produce for you. Whatever you can provide. If you have audio equipment and you notice somebody who's doing a podcast doesn't have audio equipment, or that they should have that, maybe you could offer to, let them use your studio or whatever. I mean, there's a million different ways you could think about this stuff, of what you can provide to people, whether that's in person, whether that's, just shouting them out. There's a million different ways, but I think offering value in exchange for collaborating is always a good way to go. And then I think just being consistent and doing those things, I think that's like the groundwork, because it's hard to give advice when you don't have like a specific
no, it's a very broad, but like you look at something like Gary Vee, he was arguably one of the godfathers of the internet streaming space, because he was there before YouTube. And he and for people who don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, please look him up. I mentioned him on the show before. He's doing okay for himself now, but he created that wine channel, wine library TV thing, and he would just every week just do these wine tasting videos, like what's a good wine with Oreos? What's a good wine with this? And he did it for I think 2 years with like barely anyone watching, because nobody was online. And then one day Conan O'Brien called, because when they hey, we need a wine expert, and they looked him up and he was the only guy. And they said, well, he's got 200 episodes. He must know what he's doing. And then the rest, as they say, is history. And that's why a lot of people ask me about my podcast and how'd you get there? I'm like, dude, I got 320 as of this recording, I think 320 something episodes. And I'm like, it's because I did 2 podcasts a week, because I'm psychotic. And I just every week.
Well, it's because you kept consistent, but more importantly, because you started. A lot of people don't even start.
Yes. As a quote, it says the best I think it was the best writing you never did is better than the worst writing the best writing you did is the worst writing you never did, or something along those lines. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just get up and do it.
Yeah. And I think Mark Duplass has a quote that's the 80% rule, because he's a perfectionist. And I know a lot of people are perfectionists and they're like, I can't start something else is perfect. He has an 80% rule that, if it's 80% there and it's there might be this 20% fuck up, it's okay. Just accept it. Say 80% is good enough. and go, because I don't know if you'll ever get to 100%. I never feel like anything I've ever done is 100%. That's like perfection is, I think, unattainable, but 80% is attainable. So it helps sometimes in a pinch.
Yeah, and I think 80% or perfectionists, I think a lot of it's just as a cloak for fear. You're just afraid of moving. That's a great excuse. I'm like, oh, it's not perfect. I gotta go. Oh, I need that red camera. I can't shoot. I can't shoot with without a red camera. I need this actor. I need this much money to make this movie. You don't have these illnesses. You just went out and said like, hey, I'm gonna go make stuff and I'm gonna go do stuff. And I'm sure that the videos that you guys were doing at Maker Studios are not 100%. They're not. They just like, let's no. But
definitely not.
But like, if you look even at the Mark Duplass, you look at Puffy Chair. He just went out with a camera and he just shot. Yeah. And he's like, I don't even think it was at 80%. I think that movie was like at 40 or 50% when he started. He's like, let's just go make something. But yet he made something. I always tell people
there was something there. There was something there.
There's something there, but at least you got to just go out and try it. And if you fail, you fail. Just do it at a low budget.
I can speak as someone who's gone out, it's like that whole like live life in the arena, it's like, don't be afraid to like go out there and just, get attacked and have tomatoes thrown at you and, get stabbed every once in a while. Every mean thing has ever been said to me and every bad thing's ever happened. So, and I can tell you I bounced back. So it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right.
Now I'm going to ask you a few questions to ask all of my guests. If you don't mind, you still have some time?
Yeah.
All right, cool. What advice would you give a filmmaker wanting to break into the business today?
The advice I would give for a filmmaker breaking into the business today is to do something that you're passionate about. Don't worry about the results. Talk about something that you care about and put it out into the world, and things will be good. I would say Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew. Definitely. I read that book like 10 times. So good. It's like this great diary of his time in, doing like lab research and like trying to like fund his movie. And he was like doing like all these experiments with food and things. And he's like going off and like how he made El Mariachi and then the whole process of taking it to Hollywood and then getting funding and then just kind of going off to the races. And it's a really cool book. And even though that path doesn't necessarily exist for us now, it's a great way to see like the chutzpah that somebody has in their early stages of like, just got to go off and go make it with the resources you have around you, the locations, the people, and, tell your story.
Have you ever read his second book about the making of his second movie, Road Racers?
I haven't, no.
So if you can find a copy, because I had a copy, I sold it because it's so damn expensive now.
It's rare.
It's rare because they pulled it off because I think his agents pulled it off the market. Because so this is what happened. Just a little bit of knowledge about this, because I'm a huge Robert fan, so I go deep with Robert. Yeah. It's about his second movie, Road Racers, which was like a Showtime or Cinemax movie. Right before he did Desperado, they wanted to give him something else to kind of cut his teeth on, and it's his entire experience working with a film crew, like a professional film crew. And he hated it because he was like, he's talking crap about the DP. He's talking crap about everybody. He's just like laying in on everybody. These guys are, because it's his diary again. It's the same process as Rebel Without a Crew, but for this. And he's like, I'm just trying to get on my wheelchair and push, but no one wants to push me, like do my dolly shots. And they're like, what do you do? That's not how we do things. He had a horrible time with that, but I read that book. I did get it. It took me like 6 months of waiting, but it's available on Amazon. It's like $100 and some now if you want to buy it. It's a paperback, but it's it's so good. So good. Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
Yeah, I think the lesson I've learned that took the longest, that's interesting. I would say that, through the process of making things, that you never really know how to make something until you've made it. And then once you've let's say you've filmed, as soon as I'm finished making a film, I'm like, now I want to start, because now I know exactly how it should go. And that
until
took
the next
making
one.
Stuff. Yeah.
And
then you have to apply it to the next one. But unfortunately, it's like those lessons would be so great if you could then start from your end point to just go back in time, have that Groundhog Day sort of device, and then just go start again. Because I always feel like it takes making a movie to learn how to make that movie. And each one is unique and special in that way. But but you try and take whatever lessons you can and apply it to the next one as best as possible.
You know, Spielberg's still learning. He still says, like, on every movie, I learn something new. So if Steven's still learning, we're probably going to, if we're all still learning. Now, what is the biggest fear you had to overcome in making your first features or your first work in general?
I think my first fear is not finding collaborators that want to collaborate or want to listen to you, or being steamrolled by others, because I started really young. And so when I was on set of my first feature, I was the youngest person on set, like younger than the PAs. And so I was mistaken. Nobody knew who the hell I was. And so it was just, I don't know. It was like the feeling of like being a fraud. I had to get over that.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah.
I had to get over this imposter syndrome of like, what am I doing here? Why? How come I'm the director? Like, this shouldn't happen. And so I had to find that confidence in myself to say, no, I should be here. And this is why. And then that just made it, like, and it's not yelling at people or being rude or doing anything to like throw around your power. It's more of just like an internal thing. And so that took me a few projects to really get down, of being confident in what you're doing, the story you're telling, and how you're going to do it. Because then if anyone comes up with an idea or questions you on something, it's not like, oh, they're attacking me, because that's like an insecure way to think about it. It's more of, no, they want to understand it, so they're asking you a question. And then if you're confident in yourself, then you can always be able to articulate that to any crew member. So it's having the confidence of in yourself of what you're doing. Yeah.
By the way, I used to be the youngest guy in the crew too, so enjoy it while it lasts, sir.
Oh no, that ship sailed already. I see everybody on set now, and they're like texting, like, "Hey, what's going on?" And they're like, "Oh yeah," and then they say something, and it sounds like gibberish, and it's like, "Oh, you're talking about some app I've never heard of, because I'm an old man." Okay, cool.
Like I was saying earlier, like you're like, oh God, on YouTube back in the day, I tell you.
Exactly.
Now, this is the toughest question of all. 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Oh my God. All right. Well, I'll just say the ones that come to the top of my head when you say
Perfect.
that. All right. So there's Big Lebowski, Coen Brothers.
Yes.
That's very high up.
Yes.
I think the next one I'm going to say is Ed Wood by Tim Burton.
I love Ed Wood so much, dude. I saw that in the theater when it came out, and I was like crying, not because it was funny, but because I was in pain for Ed as a director. Oh, every director should watch that movie. It's so beautiful.
It's so good. And then another one that I love that doesn't get a lot of love, and that's why I'm going to mention it, is Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. And it's Sidney Lumet's last movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it's starring Ethan Hawke, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Marissa Tomei, Albert Finney. Incredible movie. Oh, my God. It's so badass. Michael Shannon's in it. I mean, everyone's in it. And the acting is incredible. The filmmaking, it's so aggressive. He's like 80-something years old doing this movie. And it feels like a really badass indie director went off and made their first gritty crime movie. It's so cool. And I don't know what happened. I think it was a distribution thing. It just didn't get a lot of love, but that movie is great. And I recommend it to anyone.
Did you read his book, Making Movies?
Oh, yeah. I read that before making anything.
It's so good. It's such a good book. I read that too. I was like, oh my God, you're in there with him. You're like there going through it with him. It's so awesome. Now, where can people find a funny story and find more about you?
Yeah, so you can go to funnystorymovie.com, but it's also available on Apple TV, Amazon. It's available to rent or buy, and Spectrum on demand, all that kind of stuff. And then you can find me at Totally Sketch on Twitter, Instagram. Yeah, I'm not that hard to find. Just look for the dumb face. And
Michael, man, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man, and it's been great getting into the history of YouTube. Almost like you're like a historian, sir, of that movement. It's great, and it really is great. I had one of the co-founders of Rocket Jump In as well, and we talked about their days. But you have a very unique perspective on it all. And again, for everyone listening, there isn't just one way to do it anymore. Like before, there was just one way to make it in this business. Now there's thousands of ways, which is scary, but exciting at the same time. And you are definitely proof of that, sir. So thank you for sharing your knowledge bombs with the tribe today.
No, thank you, Alex. It's a pleasure to be here. Honor. Thank you.